And we are live on the Ultimate Cavs Show. Coming up in just a sec, we're going to tell you how the Cavs can be fixed over the final 3 regular season games of this 2024 campaign. Jason?
That's a tall task, but we're going to give it a shot. Also, remember that 2016 championship? I'm sure you do. We're going to argue about where that ranks in the last 10 years. I think Mike and I disagree on just how good that team was.
We'll find out coming up in just a sec on the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. Well, Jason, we're going to fix the Cavs here in a minute, but first we have to acknowledge some of the smoke that's going along on social media right now. It is no secret that JB Bickerstaff is on the hot seat heading into the playoffs, and there's been some rumors and some murmurs that the seat's been hot for quite a while now. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was times early in the year where we thought close. I almost drove to Detroit for a game because I thought it could happen. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on this team, a lot of pressure on this franchise. I don't think that's any big revelation. We'll see how they finish this week and what happens in the playoffs. But, we talked about on the show before, there could be massive changes to this organization if it doesn't go well in the playoffs. Certainly, it's not trending in the right direction. There is still time to pull the nose up. We'll see if they get it up, though, or not. And if not, there's going to be some big-time changes to the organization.
Yeah, it's put up the case that JB Bickerstaff was on the hot seat following the playoff collapse last season. He got a new chance, a new roster. We both agreed last year, Jason, he was kind of handcuffed with the players they had available against New York in that playoff series. There's only so much you can do when Danny Green is your third best option on the wing. And against a team like New York, there's just frankly not a whole lot you can do. But it is certainly judgment day for JB and the entire front office, the rest of their staff, and a bunch of the players on the Cavaliers. So we acknowledge the fact that we've seen that report, but frankly, I don't think that's really news or anything groundbreaking we hadn't known beforehand.
I just lost my screen. I'm putting off a software update, and it keeps trying to get me to update it, and I keep clicking out of it. I can't see you. I can't see the screen. I'm just going to talk. How's that?
Okay, that works. Well, if you see Jason doing something weird, now you guys know why. But Jason, there are 3 regular season games left, all at home for the Cavs. They have Memphis tomorrow. They have Indiana on Friday, and then they close out the regular season with the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday. A chance to, frankly, go 3-0 down the stretch, give a little bit of positive momentum and good feelings heading into the postseason. We'll talk about playoff matchups in a sec, but first, it has been a slide over the last month for the Cavs. They are 11-16 in their last 27 games. But Jason, it's not all lost yet. There still is a chance to fix it. And if you were in charge, if you were the one looking at this organization and this team saying, these are the fixes, A, B, and C we have to make to give ourselves the best chance at winning a playoff series, what changes would those be?
Boy, if it were that simple, I think they would have done it already. Put the ball in Donovan's hand, play through Donovan as much as possible. I'd play through Evan Mobley, who's playing really well lately, even though the team is sort of cratering. Mobley's been pretty good of late. And really you need a buyback in from these guys. I think the body language has been terrible. And I can't say the feeling around the team because I haven't been around the team, but just watching the games, the body language just looks bad. Everything about it looks bad. And they just need a palate cleanser, I think, if that makes sense, going into playoffs, of saying, guys, we didn't end the way that we wanted, but, the veterans on this team know better than anyone. The postseason is completely different than the regular season. And there's still time. There's still time, especially if they catch the right matchup. There's still time to put this thing back together. You have to tell Darius to just flush it, everything that he's been through this year. It's been a really rough season for him. You have to tell him that it doesn't matter anymore. Like, what we need from you is right now. Right now is what we need from you. And almost give them like, okay, that part's over. Catch your breath and let's go. And I know that's not really a fix, but I don't know that you can really I don't know that you can fix the fact that their 2 bigs don't fit together great. I don't know that you can fix the fact that their 2 small guards in the backcourt don't always necessarily seem to fit together great. I don't know if there's fixes for that, in April. I think it's more of a mentality switch than anything, and getting these guys to believe and getting these guys to buy back in. I don't know. I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's the best I've got right now, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a good answer. We'll just call a spade, not a great answer, Jason. That's called hope. And I'm going to give you some reality here. What I do think the Cavs can try and implement over 3 games, over what's that, 48, 96, 100 and however many minutes are left in the regular season.
Yeah.
I think 2 things in particular they have to get back to. A, defensively. If there's been anything constant about a JB Bickerstaff coach team over his 7 years, is that they try and at least give an effort defensively night in, night out throughout the regular season. And since the All-Star break, frankly, the Cavs have gone from being an elite defensive team to a not good. We're not talking average. We're talking not good defensive team, Jason. And it surprises me a bit because around the league, defensive numbers have gone up. Refs have stopped calling as many fouls. Free throws are down. We've seen offensive numbers trend down a little bit. And while I thought that would actually benefit Cleveland, other teams have just leapfrogged them in terms of these defensive ratings. Before the All-Star break, I was looking at these numbers right before we hopped on. The Cavs had the second best defense in the NBA, according to defensive rating, allowing 110.3 points per 100 possessions. That was second best, only behind Minnesota. After the All-Star break, they've gone from second to 24th, Jason. Post-All-Star break, 24th in the NBA in defensive rating, a 115.7, 115.7. That's a 5.5-point drop from where they were pre-All-Star break. And it's interesting because for the most part, outside of one Evan Mobley rolled ankle, they've had both of their bigs. I know Isaac Okoro's missed a few games, but he's been relatively healthy. Dean Wade's missed a chunk of time now. Hopefully he comes back soon. So they've missed individual pieces, but there's no reason they should have cratered and dropped that far in a defensive ranking for the most part when they've been not healthy. They've been dealing with injuries, but you've still had Jarrett Allen. You've been in and out on the wings, but that's still way too much of a drop-off for any team that's dealing with injuries. It's part of the game. But just because you're losing one guy and Isaac's by far the best perimeter defender, he's missed, 3 games now? 4 games? It's not like he's been out for a significant amount of time. They were fine defensively without Evan Mobley in the first half of the season. Why in the second half now can they not stop a nosebleed? Donovan has missed almost the entire second half of the season. It's not like he's a great perimeter defender, so I don't look too much into that. But they got to find their defensive identity again, Jason. And I'm not quite sure exactly how they do that in 3 games, but I think that's where it all starts. You have to force your opponents into tough shots. Against New York in the postseason last year, their defense was fine. They couldn't score on offense, Jason. That's why they lost that series.
You're right.
Because New York was putting up 120 points a night. So they have to find that level of defense and that level of consistency and get back, maybe not second, but they should still be a top 10, top 12 defense. Hell, at worst case, top half of the league, top 15 at minimum. 24th is unacceptable. And if you look at all the flaws and what happened to the Cavs over the last 2 months, I think their collapse defensively is something to look at. And secondly, I want them to push the pace. The game against the Los Angeles Clippers on Sunday, Jason, I thought was a microcosm of their entire season. Check this out. In the first quarter, I'm going to go through quarter by quarter pace and offensive rating. They scored 80 points in the first half. It was a phenomenal offensive half. No Donovan Mitchell. Everyone was making shots. And I think part of the reason their offensive numbers were so prolific was they were running. They had 148 offensive rating in both the first and the second quarter, Jason. In the third quarter, it dropped to a 78. In the fourth quarter, it dropped to an 87. So you go from nearly 150 to just about half of that in the third quarter, and it dropped to 54 points into the fourth quarter. That's directly correlated to their pace of play. They had a 108 pace in the first quarter, a 110 pace in the second, a 92 and a 91 in the third and fourth, Jason. When they play slow, I don't trust, especially without Donovan Mitchell being healthy, their half-court offense to break down defenses in the postseason that are scouted so directly to what Cleveland wants to do that I want to see this team run. And I want to see them jack 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. And you got to hope you catch fire against one of these teams because that's the great equalizer in today's NBA. Play better defense, run, and let it fly from deep. That's almost the recipe they had on that 18-2 stretch. Granted, Mobley and Garland came back. They still won games, but they were playing faster. They were shooting and taking more threes. They were making more threes. It's a make-or-miss league. We all know that. But I think those are some legitimate changes we can see from JB Bickerstaff and this Cleveland Cavaliers roster over the next 3 games to try and put themselves in the best position possible to win a playoff series in 2 weeks.
historically, the game slows down in the playoffs.
Yes.
So if you're trying to ramp up the pace, I agree with you in theory. I don't know if it's practical because the game grinds to a halt in the playoffs, even for the teams that do push. So I'll be curious to see how that translates. Defensively, you're 100% right. And I was having a conversation with somebody last year when the Cavs were on the ropes in that Knicks series when they were down and it wasn't going well. I was talking to somebody in the league who's like, you don't have to be elite defensively to win in the playoffs. You don't have to be number one. You just can't be, number 30.
You can't be 24th.
Middle of the pack is okay, but the shooting component is more important than the defensive component in the playoffs. This is just one guy's opinion. One guy who's worked in the league for a long time, who said if you can shoot in the playoffs, elite shooting travels better than elite defense, basically.
Fact.
So I agree with you. They can't be where they're at. And there's certainly room for improvement. This team can play better defensively. They've proven that for years under JB, that they know how to get it done on the defensive side. And again, when the game slows to a half-court game, that should play into their defensive ability. I don't know that they need to be at an elite level on that, but they need some elite shooting to come back as well. And I don't know. We've talked at length about Isaac Okoro on this and how he was making himself a lot of money, and then that kind of went away. And this is a big couple weeks coming up for Isaac that really is going to dictate his fate and determine his future. But they've got to find guys who can make shots in the playoffs. Pressure shots in the postseason is going, to me, more than anything, is going to determine how far this thing goes. Even more than the defensive end is, do they have people who can make wide open shots, and do they have guys who can make pressure shots? I believe Donovan's one of those guys who can make pressure shots, but he can't do it by himself. This isn't Giannis. This isn't LeBron. This isn't KD that we're talking about here. He's not good enough to carry an entire franchise through the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think that's been proven time and again. So they've got to find guys who can make open shots, and that's one of the major questions. We knew they didn't have it last year. We knew they didn't have the personnel. In theory, they should have it now. They should have guys who can knock down open shots now. Now they have to go out there and do it.
And the reason I mentioned defense leading to offense is they are kind of in a way tied hand in hand, Jason. When you're playing both bigs, especially the lineups where Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are sharing the court together, there's no excuse not to out-rebound your opponent in almost any matchup in the Eastern Conference. You have the size advantage. Yeah. And if the Cavs are going to lock down on defense and play the two bigs together, which I don't think is their best option, but I think it's an inevitability at this point. That's how JB Bickerstaff wants to play. They have to corral every defensive rebound, get out in transition, and try to push the pace. And even if you don't get a shot early, at least make the defense adjust, rotate, and counteract to what you're trying to get in early offense. So then when you do set up a half-court set, they may have a mismatch you can take advantage of, whether it's in the post, whether it's Donovan on a big. However, they have to counteract your early push. And that's what I think they have to try and take advantage of, because I don't like what I've seen, especially late in games over the last month and a half, how the Cavs are attacking these late shot clock situations. I think it just, personally, it looks a little frantic and unorganized. So if it's going to be unorganized, let's try to get an early advantage, take advantage of a mismatch and the ability to then capitalize on the defense having to pick up someone else because you're the first guy down the court. But it all starts with defense. You have to get stops. You have to rebound, and then you can try and run. And then in transition, I'm usually not a just chuck 53s a game guy, but I think at this point, the Cavs just have to chuck 53s, hope they make 20, and hope that's enough to beat a team in the playoffs. Because as we currently see this team and how their offense is constructed, I don't love their chances of scoring against the Knicks or Orlando, who's really good defensively, in the half-court set time after time after time, when those teams, frankly, just have so much length and size that's given the Cavs struggles over the past few years.
Well, that segues beautifully into the second topic we wanted to cover, because I think there's some teams that it would be easier for them to get shots off against than others, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's opponents and matchups and ideal matchups and not so great matchups.
And before we do that, a quick word from FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, Jason, let's talk playoff matchups here. We'll start with our favorite. And I think we're going to agree on the first. I'm not sure we'll agree on set 2, 3, 4, and 5. But if it was up to the Cavs, who would they want? Who should they? And obviously you can't tank or win certain games. It's such a cluster, you know what, in the Eastern Conference standings. But who should the Cavs want to face in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs?
If I'm going to be totally honest with you, none of those teams right now I feel good about.
There's one I feel good about.
Well, you go first, and I'll tell you why I don't like it, because whatever you pick, I'm not going to like. But you go first.
The team, if it was up to me that they had to play, is Indiana. Like, you have to want to play Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton's been a shell of himself since the injury. He's averaging 17 and 10 since he got hurt. He's shooting 31% from the floor. I don't trust Pascal Siakam to be a go-to scorer if Halliburton's not. And yes, they like to run, but their defense is non-existent. I'm not saying I'd pick them in a sweep, but I don't like Indiana very much as they limp to the stretch as well. So that's the team I would feel most comfortable playing if I was the Cavs in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to pick one, that's the one. The reason I don't like Indiana is because they play fast and they can score a ton of points. And I don't know that the Cavs can win a shootout series if that's what it comes to, which again goes back to the defensive principles that we were talking about earlier. If you make me pick one of these teams, it's going to be Indiana. And I would probably pick them to beat Indiana in the series, but I don't love any of these matchups right now with the way the Cavs are playing. Indiana and Orlando are the two that you would circle that you would probably have the most faith in, I think. But you're right. Orlando's great defensively. I think they're better than people think. I think they're sneaky good. They got length to them. But that's a team that's never really been there. So, maybe you could take advantage of that a little bit. Orlando does not have much of a home court advantage, at least when I was covering the league. They didn't. So it's not like they're going to blow you out of the arena with noise and fan support and everything else. So, if from that perspective, you might like them. So, I mean, Indiana and Orlando are probably the two teams you would most like to face, but I don't think either one of them is a given. I think both of them would.
Yeah, Orlando's good. And Jason froze. If you're in the chat, Jason's back. Okay, yeah, your last second cut out there, Jason. But Orlando's good, and they have two elite defenders. Jalen Suggs might be the best guard defender in all of basketball. And Jonathan Isaac, he only plays 20 minutes a game. He is the single best defensive player in all of basketball. He can stop guards. He can stop centers. He is the most elite of elite guys. He just can't stay healthy. That's a matchup that scares me just from a physicality standpoint. But, Jason, I'm going to give you a little curveball here. Obviously, Indiana is the team I want to play. I think that's the best matchup for the Cavs. If it's not the Indiana Pacers, I actually want to play the New York Knicks. And there's a reason why. And I understand, and I see you rolling your eyes, and I can't tell if that's on delay. I can't tell if that's on delay.
I didn't roll my eyes.
That's in response to my Knicks comment. But, hey, two things. One, it's a chance at revenge. We're going to get a chance to see the mental makeup of every single player on this Cavs roster who was here last year. Do you have any semblance of a dog in you? Yes or no? If you do, there's no better place and no better opportunity to prove that than in another first-round series against New York, a rematch of last year's 4-1 throbbing, upset loss, however you want to describe it. The lights were too bright. There is no better opportunity to give yourself a little redemption, to prove you're not as soft as you were characterized as after that series. There's no better way to create some buzz and create some energy around this team than avenging the loss that, frankly, I think set this franchise back a year or two, Jason, when you look at it from the big picture, and we'll get to that way later down the road. But that was a stumbling block that they did not anticipate in week one or in year one. I also want the smoke. It's New York. It's MSG. That's the brightest of lights. That's the biggest of stages. And maybe Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen don't want the bright lights, but I want to learn real quick. We got Boston in the second round if it's the 4-5 matchup. That's going to be a colossal, and I mean a colossal task to knock off the Boston Celtics. But if we're going to have any chance of making any type of noise, you have to prove that you can beat a New York team that doesn't have Julius Randle. You don't know about OG Anunoby. Jalen Brunson has been phenomenal, but guess what? As good as Jalen Brunson is, I don't think at the end of the day he's a better player than Donovan Mitchell. That's a series where a healthy Donovan, and health is the key word there, would be the best player in that series. I'm not saying I'd pick the Cavs. I'm not saying I'd pick the Knicks. I got to see how these next 3 games play out. But, Jason, that is a team just like Cleveland who is limping to the stretch and dealing with injuries. And I understand Tibbs and I understand the mental aspect of New York last year is still lingering across the entire Cavs organization right now. But I don't want to duck from the smoke. Like, if it's not Indiana, I'd much rather play New York than have to deal with an Orlando team that's a complete unknown. Or, hell, I definitely don't want to see Embiid. And I don't want anything to do with Miami. So maybe this is by elimination of options. But I think New York's actually the second team I'd want to play if I have my choice of first-round opponents for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
2 things. Number one, I think they are that soft. We saw it with Russ Westbrook after the game the other night, sort of taunting the bench. Who's the only one that did anything about it? Tristan Thompson. Tristan's the only one that stepped forward, that walked forward, and is like, man, shut up and get out of here. He's the only one. The rest of them didn't make a move. And I just think that this is just who they are. Like, they've proven it. They've told us time and again that's who they are. I don't think that they're a very tough team, quite frankly. But I also don't think that New York is 4-1 better than the Cavs. Like, in a 5-game series, New York should not win 4 – or in a 7-game series, New York should not win 4-1. Like, they're not that much better. Yeah. I don't believe. So, I don't know. I mean, I told you last year I didn't like that matchup, that Cavs-Knicks matchup, because the Knicks are so much more physical and they can dominate the boards, and that's still the case. So I tell you right now, if it's a Knicks Cavs series, I'm probably picking the Knicks again because I don't think much has changed from last year. But I like where you're going with it. Like, you know, I don't think it ends in 5 again this year. You know, I think the Cavs they better get more than 1 in a rematch this time around. But I just don't love that matchup, Randall or no Randall. I don't know that they are good enough to compete with the Knicks on the glass in a 7-game series.
And that's totally fair. And I understand that none of these are, frankly, great matchups, right? Like, Orlando, I don't think is a great matchup on paper. They're big, they're long, their guards are physical. And once again, I don't think the Cavs are the toughest mentally or physical team on the block. But if this goes south, let's say they lose a first-round series to whoever they play, Jason, we're going to have a lot of questions for every single player on this roster. And one question we may not be able to answer if it's against Orlando or Indiana or someone else is, all right, who's tough enough that they could be a building block and a cornerstone for this franchise with Donovan or without Donovan? And I know for sure if they have to go up against the Knicks again, we're going to find out one way or the other who's kind of has that internal dog in them. And I want that answer because I think I know how I feel about most of these guys. I have my opinion as of, what's today, April 9th. But if I'm making a decision on the long term, what's best for this franchise, I need a little more data to back up and confirm what I believe at this point. And I don't think there's any better way to get that confirmation than a rematch against New York. And if New York, by the way, was 16-2 in their last 18 games like they were in March, I want nothing to do with them. They also happen to be playing a little bit of a they've hit a little slump here and some injuries have taken their toll. So for those two reasons,
is anyone in the East playing well outside of Boston? Like, no. Boston's playing well. Is anybody else?
No.
Nobody else is.
No, it's disgusting. Milwaukee, there might not be
the whole East is imploding
that wins 50 games outside of Boston. Seriously, 50 games.
That's crazy.
Place in the East. So
that's crazy.
It is what it is. If you're in the chat, let us know what you think. Who would you most want to play? Actually, no, screw that. If you would want to play the Knicks in the first round, give us a 1. If you want nothing to do with the Knicks in the playoffs, give us a 2. But give us a 1 if you want to see the Knicks, a 2 if you want nothing to do with the Knicks. Jason, let me do a read, and we'll get to our last topic of the day. If you've ever had a frustrating time buying tickets online, especially if it was for a Major League Baseball game, you're not alone, and we have the solution for you. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and the prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer it gets to first pitch. You can use the Game Time app to see the upcoming schedule for Guardians games, for Cavs games, their final 3 home games, or a playoff game. Hell, you can even start buying tickets for the Browns next season. All the features are easy. My favorite feature on Game Time is the fact you can toggle on, include all fees, so you know your final price and what you're seeing on your screen is what you're going to pay. So make sure you download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Jason, I came across this the other day on Twitter. I sent it to you. I figured it'd be a fun way to end the show here. But someone ranked the last 10 NBA champions, and they had the 2016 Cavs as the fourth best champion over the last decade. Now, you covered that team. You covered the 2018 Warriors championship, the 2017 Warriors championship, and a couple other ones in between. But what do you think about ranking the Cavs in the fourth spot? Too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's too low. And it's funny because, I mean, I'm literally staring at a blank screen right now that says update your computer now. So I can't remember. Like, I've been staring at it for the last 22 minutes. I've been fighting off this. Every time it tries to update, I manually shut it off.
the rankings, Jason, so you could get
give me the top four again, because I don't have it in front of me.
17 Warriors, 18 Warriors, 2014 Spurs, and then the Cavaliers.
Well, I mean, obviously 2017 Warriors is correct. That team was unbelievable. That was the first year KD was there. That's number one. I don't think there's any debate about that. However, I would put the 2016 Cavs number two. I would put them ahead of the Spurs, and I would certainly put them ahead of the 2018 Warriors. That 2018 Warriors team was very fragile, and they were lucky to win that championship. And I know that may sound absurd because that team still had KD and they were rolling, but they barely made it through Houston in 7 games in the West. And I remember talking to Cavs players in the locker room during that series, early in that series, who felt like, man, that team is vulnerable. They are right there. If we could just put a little bit more pressure on them, we could break them. But that little bit more pressure they were referring to was Kyrie, who was in a Boston jersey at the time after that trade. They didn't have the necessary pieces. They just were outmanned. But that 2018 Warriors team was not nearly as good as the 17 team. I remember talking to Bob Myers before the start of the finals, and he said, like, this isn't going to last as long as people think it is. And he was right. He was 100% right. And that kind of like that's one of those conversations that stuck with me all these years later. Here we are 6 years later, and I remember that conversation because he said, like, this will end quicker than people think. So I would put the 2016 Cavs too. And quite frankly, if we're being totally honest, I know that was a rank of championship teams. The 2017 Cavs was better than the 2016 Cavs and the 2018 Warriors. That 2017 Cavs team was the best version of that they had. But Kyle Korver missed a quarter three. He was brought to Cleveland to hit one shot, and he missed it. It was a quarter three in home, and I can't remember which game it was now. And the Cavs just, I mean, that 2017 Warriors team was just absolutely dominant. But that 2017 Cavs team was also the best version of that championship window. But I would put the 2016 Cavs second on that list. I know you probably have a little bit lower than that.
So, I mean, I'm going to defer to your expertise because you were up close and personal for the 2016 team. You saw the 17 and 18 Warriors up close. At that point, I was just watching on TV. I do think they're better than the 2014 Spurs. That 2014 Spurs team was good, but I didn't think it was that good.
No, I didn't think so either.
They beat Miami, but Miami that was the end of the LeBron Miami run, right? I'm remembering correctly. That was Kawhi.
Yep. Yeah, that was the last year.
Player. It was the end of Tim Duncan and Tony Parker, though. Like, that was obviously a good team, but I didn't think that was like an all-time team. I actually think last year's Nuggets are being a little bit slept on here at 7 on the list, Jason. And I also think the 2020 Lakers, the bubble team, that was LeBron and his LA peak with the best stretch of Anthony Davis's career. Like, those two are top 50 guys all time. I think it tends a little disrespectful. Convince me and tell me why the 2016 Cavs are better than the 2018 Warriors, Jason, because I think at worst the Cavs are 3. Tell me why they're better than the 18 Warriors and why they should be in second place instead of third.
They're better than the 18 Warriors because the 18 Warriors were on the verge of just self-imploding. It wasn't so much a talent issue. It was just the pressure of the moment, the pressure of playing with Durant and how Durant changed the dynamic of that thing. If you want to go line by line, talent by talent, yeah, okay, fine, probably the 18 Warriors. But if you put, and we'll never know this obviously, but if you put the 16 Cavs against the 18 Warriors, 16 Cavs win that series, I think, because there were pressure points on that Warriors team. If you could apply pressure to the right pressure points, that thing was going to crack. Draymond was already starting to unravel a little bit, and it was just more of an internal thing than it was a talent thing.
Yeah.
Talent, fine, but I'm just from being there, from living it, from seeing it every day, that 2016 Cavs team was special. And to come back from the 3-1 deficit that they did, and I remember talking to Ty after, I think when they went after Game 4, when they went down 3-1, and Ty said, like, we're the better team. Like, I don't understand how we're in this position because we're better. And I mean, obviously they came back and won. But then I remember the 2017 team, that team was unmatched. And that team was so incredible.
It's the best
After
team I've ever
Game
seen,
2,
hands down.
After Game 2 out there, I think it was, I saw David Griffin after the game, and he was sort of arms folded, hands down, walking off the court. This was a ways after the game, about an hour after the game, and I said, "You have to play perfect to beat them." And he said, "Yeah." Like, yeah. And how often do you hear a GM admit that or say that? But that was the reality of it, was the Cavs would have to play perfect basketball for 48 minutes to beat that team. But the 2018 was not the same as that 2017 Warriors team. They had already won their championship. Kevin Durant had his title, and it was just the feel of that team was just different than what the Cavs had.
So if I just knocked myself out of the stream for a second, came back, that was a magic trick I didn't know was possible. Don't click that button again. Lesson learned. It's crazy, Jason. And we got 2 minutes. So if you're in the chat, drop your comments real quick. I'll try to get them in. But the Cavs should have won like 3 or 4 rings during that period. That team was so good. And this was right when I got out of college, right when some of my friends started working in the NBA. And I was telling them, like, this Cavs team is like an all-time great team, like a legit all-time great team. They just happen to be going up against maybe the greatest team ever assembled in the association. And, you know, I'm not a diehard Cavs fan from birth. I know some of the people in the chat are. Jason, I know you grew up in the area. The fact that they were only able to win 1 title during that stretch with Kevin and LeBron and Kyrie, it's not even a disappointment because of how good the team on the West was. But you can make a case that's a top 10 team in the history of the league. I swear it was that good.
Well, then the thing is, and we wrote this after the 18th series, the Warriors were the dynasty nobody saw coming. Like, that was the team the Cavs didn't even see coming. It was supposed to be the Spurs. Like, when LeBron came back, all the talk was, can the Cavs beat the Spurs? And they never even saw the Spurs because the Warriors just sort of evolved or rose from dust into this massive power in 2014. Obviously, Cavs had a ton of injuries in that finals. In the 15 finals, a lot of Cavs fans feel like they would have won that series had they had either Kevin or Kyrie, let alone both of them. And then obviously you get the title in 16, and then Kevin comes, and then that's game over after that. After Durant joined the Warriors, the Cavs really were just completely outmanned after that. And it's unfortunate because Cavs easily could have had 2, 3, or even 4 titles in that stretch.
It's crazy. We got in trouble for going over last time, so unfortunately we got to dip out here, Jason. We got 30 seconds. I see three questions in the chat. I'll try to answer them tomorrow on UCSS. I'll get Jason's opinion. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the Ultimate Cavs Show. As always, for Jason Lloyd, I'm Mikey McNuggets, and we'll see you guys tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Peace.